Good morning, everybody. Hey, welcome to a Saturday live stream where we're going to be looking at this mighty now, because it arrived really broken and busted and had a lot of issues going on, from wiring to mechanical, you name it. This machine out of Illinois that belongs to Lorie and Rex arrived very troubled. And I'll probably share some pictures with you. Otherwise, I'll post them on Facebook and you can check out some of the issues that the machine had, some of the processes that the machine was taken through in the workshop here in Kentucky. Yeah, let's have fun today. A little bit more Christmas music, and also excited to have Tim in the live stream today. Tim has been very busy as a caregiver, taking care of his beloved Teresa, who recently went through some major surgery. Continue to keep Teresa and Tim in your thought and prayers if you would. It's tough around the holidays for all of us, but especially when you're recovering from a major operation. So we love all of you, and we certainly love Tim and Teresa as well. So let's take care of the family, and let's enjoy some Christmas music as well. All right, I'm going to put a pause on the music. I'm going to put a pause on the music, and we're going to start jumping into this machine pretty quick. Now, let me walk you around this PFAFF 130-6. Now, what makes it a 130-6 versus a PFAFF 130? Well, The PFAFF 130, let me ask all of you this in the audience. Does anyone know anything about PFAFF? Does anyone know anything about PFAFF? Well, if you don't, I'm going to share some facts with you. And if one of the leadership team members would type it into the live chat, that would be fabulous. So a little bit about the PFAFF Sewing Machine Company. They were founded right around 1862. And it took about 10 years after they were officially founded to start ramping things up. The first couple of years, I should say almost the first decade that they were in operation, they only made about 1,000 machines. That is really slugging it. You know what I mean? Most machine manufacturers would make hundreds of thousands, if not millions of machines within the first 10-year period. But PFAFF was taking it slow and easy in Kaiserslautern, Germany. And so things started really slow for them with only 1,000 machines by 1872. Now, some of you might remember, I know we're not talking about Swedish beauties today, but there was another company founded in 1872, 10 years after PFAFF came online. Does anyone remember who that is? What other famous sewing machine company? We've shown this type of machine on this channel a billion times, maybe not a billion, but we've shown it a lot of times. Does anyone remember what company, sewing machine company, was founded right around 1872? Yeah, Tim nailed it. Viking Husqvarna started making sewing machines around 1872. Now, they were established as an entity much earlier than that, all the way back to the 1600s. And so when Singer and other companies start bragging about, well, we've been around 170 years, we've been around as an entity 200 years or whatever it is, Viking Husqvarna really has bragging rights because they came online as an entity in the 1600s by a royal decree, but they didn't start making sewing machines till around 1872. Around 1872, they started rolling them out. And at the same time, PFAFF had made about 1,000 sewing machines. Now, as things progressed, they started really ramping it up. And by 1910, PFAFF had made their 1 millionth sewing machine. By 1910, they were so excited about their milestones that in 1912, there was an official U.S. postage stamp that was made to honor their 50th anniversary. If you didn't know that, you learned something new today, right? Their first rotary sewing machines came online around 1922, and finally, about 10 years later, in 1932, the magnificent PFAFF 130 model was introduced. And it was later that they came out with this model, 130-6, where they added a second cleated belt for super heavy-duty sewing. So inside of the pillar area of Lorie's machine here, instead of a single cleated belt, a cleated belt is basically a nylon type belt that has all of these little teeth in it that bite into the drive shaft. So you've got positive traction. There's not going to be any slippage unless it's from the motor. And when they came out with a 130-6, which was in the early 1950s, they added that second cleated belt with the idea that this was going to really be not a household sewing machine, but it was really going to be in the class of a light industrial type machine. And it was fitted with with two different motors, either a 1.1 motor, a 1.1 amp motor, or in some cases, a 1.3 amp motor. Now, Lorie and Rex's machine does not have either of those motors. It has an aftermarket Japanese motor. And I'm going to test some of you with your math skills. I'm going to test some of you with your math skills and ask you to do a conversion for me. I want you to do a conversion. Let me just tuck this cord out of the way. There we go. So on the back of this machine that belongs to Lorie and Rex out of Illinois, it's got an aftermarket motor. Now you're going to be looking at it upside down, so I apologize for that. But let me help you out a little bit and tell you that it's rated at 80 watts. And it has a voltage of 120 volts. So if you Google what is the amperage of a electric motor that is rated at 80 watts, 120 volts, it's going to tell you the amperage of this aftermarket Japanese motor. And it's going to be significantly less than an original PFAFF sewing machine motor. So again, 120 volts, 80 watts. What is the amperage of this motor? What is the amperage of this aftermarket motor? Lorie and Rex's machine also does not have an original PFAFF motor like this one over here, this 332. This is what an original PFAFF sewing machine foot controller looks like. Kind of looks like a bus pedal, doesn't it? Looks like a bus pedal. Their pedal is, again, an aftermarket. You can kind of see it down there. It's an aftermarket Mercury style foot controller. And this particular one is not rated. And it always makes me nervous. It makes me a little bit nervous when a foot controller is not rated in relation to a motor, because you don't know if that foot controller might be underrated, might not have enough of a voltage tolerance, and the result can be then that foot controller will overheat. Now, in the sewing I did on Lorie and Rex's 130-6, I didn't get a significant raise in temperature on the foot controller. It got warm, but it didn't get hot. So I'm confident that it should work for them. But ideally, you always want to try to have a foot controller and a motor that are original to the machine whenever possible. And this particular foot controller actually arrived damaged. A part of the porcelain housing that actually holds the electrical field assembly in a fixed, safe position inside of the foot controller was actually busted when it was shipped from Illinois. I'll show you what that looks like. Let me open up those pictures real quick. Let's see if I can find those. Let's see here. Let me do this off screen. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Finally. So, and you might, any of you that are regulars in the audience, you probably remember when I did the unboxing of Lorie and Rex's machine from Illinois, I found a piece of porcelain floating around in the box. And once I dug into the machine, I found out that it belonged to the inside of the foot controller, which I kind of suspected. I'll show you the foot controller there with the piece that broke off. Let's see, which way do I go? That way. You can see it. You can see the break real clear right there. It's the only anchor point that holds the electrical coils and everything for the foot controller in place. And that piece had broken out, which means the bolt that was screwed in there wasn't holding those electrical coils in a fixed position, and they could have touched the outside of the foot controller, which is metal. What happens when something that's electrified touches something that's metal? It's not a good situation. Not a good situation at all. There you can see, and I took it through a repair process. You can see me starting to do that right there. I'll go through it kind of quick. There you get a real picture of how devastating that damage to the foot controller was. That's a large crack out of there where there was nothing holding these coils up here from touching part of the casing of the foot controller. There you can see it again right there. But my point is, sometimes machines are shipped with troubles, and because of the way the the carrier, whoever's moving the machine, whether it's UPS or FedEx, or maybe it is USPS, around the holidays and otherwise, they generally don't treat our sewing machines that are being shipped with a great deal of kindness and care. And that's why we pack them the way we do. And we put fragile stickers on the outside and everything, but they can still get beat around, dropped. Sometimes they fall off of conveyor belts and hit the ground, from 15, 20 feet up. And if they're not packed real well, damage beyond what was occurring with the machine before it was shipped can occur. And so if you're going to ship a machine to Susie and I out in Kentucky, watch our videos on the YouTube channel. It'll show you step by step how to pack a machine, whether you're shipping it from Illinois or from Germany. It'll arrive safely. I promise you it will. So a quick walk around this machine. Holy cow. Am I reading those numbers right? Do we have about 1,200 people in the live stream right now? Jeeping jizzards, if that's really a word. What a blessing. How exciting. And especially, on a Saturday. Saturday's real busy leading up to the holidays, and to have over 1,000 people in the live stream, that's fabulous. Fabulous. Oops, I just knocked over Herr Obermeister. I'll put him up here so I don't hurt him. So a quick walk around this machine, and then we're going to get into sewing off with it right away. So a quick walk around the machine. And I'll point out a couple other things first. When this machine came to the workshop, it had the wrong bobbin in it. It had a Class 66 bobbin. As a matter of fact, it was this bobbin right here. It had this Class 66 bobbin in it, and I am assuming that Lorie was trying to sew with this PFAFF 130-6 with a Class 66 bobbin. Just because a bobbin will fit into your bobbin case, it doesn't mean that it's the correct bobbin. And it will have major impacts on how the machine can do its job. So I have set up Lorie with a total of 5 of the appropriate PFAFF bobbin so that the machine will be happy. I've got one in the machine right now, and then I have these other 4 that are going to be shipped with the machine when it goes out, potentially as early as tomorrow. If I can get this machine packed up today, Susie and I will drop it off in Corbin, Kentucky, where there's a UPS store, and this will start heading back to Illinois as early as, well, it won't start traveling tomorrow. It'll sit in their store until Monday late afternoon, and then UPS will come by and pick it up. So I'll try to get it dropped off tomorrow, but if I can, I'll get it dropped off on Monday. Susie and I will take a special trip down there, and then they'll pick it up on Monday, and it'll start heading back to Illinois starting on Monday. Probably you'll get there by Thursday or Friday, I'm guessing. But yeah, always double check your bobbins, double check that you've got the right setup with your sewing machine, whether it's a 130-6 or whether it's another sewing machine entirely. So always double check that. I'll send this bobbin back that was in the machine. Oh, actually this bobbin, excuse me. I'll send this bobbin back. So if Lorie has a Class 66 type machine at home, one of the Singer models, a lot of those use these, she can put it back into motion in one of those other machines. Now, I'll give you some quick measurements. So if you order bobbins for a PFAFF 130 or a 130-6, you're going to know that you've got the right bobbin as far as its measurements. So I'm going to use our caliper. I'll measure the height of it first, like this. Measure the height of it. And we're getting a measurement of about 12, a little bit shy of 12 millimeters. Now I'm going to measure it like this. And we're getting a measurement of about 28 millimeters. So again, the width of it like this, or the height, depending on how you look at it, the measurement this way is going to be right around, let's say 11 millimeters. 11 millimeters. The measurement this way is going to be right around 28 millimeters. Now, the other thing you want to be concerned about is the hole, because it's got a mount on the machine for bobbin winding. So we're just going to measure that hole as best as we can. And we're looking at a hole opening of right around 9 millimeters. So if you just want to note that way, when you order replacement bobbins, or maybe you'll order original ones, you're going to be more confident with those measurements, assuming you have a mechanical caliper. You're going to be more confident that you can have the right setup from the beginning, if that makes sense. I'm going to move these bobbins out of the way. I've also upgraded Lorie's machine. This is the bulb that the machine came with. Kind of an interesting bulb, isn't it? It's kind of an interesting bulb, but it really wasn't bright at all. So Susie and I went by and picked up an LED screw-in bulb, and it puts out so much more light. You can actually see that in the shot right there. Herr Obermeister's base and everything that he's standing on is lit up real well. It makes it so much easier and so much less stressful when you can see what the heck you're sewing. You know what I mean? So I can certainly send this bulb back along with the Class 66 bobbin, but if Lorie tells me to keep them, she doesn't want them, then I'll put them in my inventory, and Susie and I will use them on another machine. We probably won't use this, but we might use the Class 66 bobbin. The other thing that I upgraded on the machine was the wiring. You'll see on Facebook, once I post it, someone had used a lamp cord type wiring to connect the foot controller. And the foot controller has to be wired in such a way that it can reach its maximum output. Now, again, the foot controller that is with Lorie's machine, we don't know what the rating is on that foot controller. It could be rated at 1 amp. It could be rated at 0.6 amps. We just don't know. So all we can do is just monitor it as we're operating it and make sure it doesn't get super hot. If it gets super hot, that's going to tell us that the motor is demanding more than the foot controller can put out. And that's true of any sewing machine. If the foot controller is underrated and the motor is larger than the amperage tolerance of the foot controller, then the foot controller will get hot trying to keep up with the motor. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. It's really important you understand that, because in extreme circumstances, it could cause a fire and it could burn your house down. So you got to be watchful of that. So I went from lamp cord, which is how the machine arrived, which was probably about, if it was 20 gauge, I'm probably being generous. It wasn't rated well. And I went to 16 gauge wiring, which is more than ample to support this Japanese aftermarket motor. And I don't know if anyone got the answer or not, but if they did, I want to give them a clap off. If you did the math and you said, okay, it's an electric motor with 120 volts and it's got a rating of 80 watts, then the motor on the back of Lorie and Rex's machine rates out at about 0.67 amps. 0.67 amps. Now that's a little bit more than, or I should say, it's It's about half power from the original motor that would have been on this 130-6. Again, it would have come with a 1.1 or maybe a 1.3 amp motor. The aftermarket Japanese motor on Lorie's machine is only rated at 0.67. So we're not going to have the, as our friends say over in Europe, we're not going to have the engine size that this machine was meant to have, but it'll get the job done. Japanese make good motors, and even though it's underrated in relation to the original class of the machine, it's a pretty strong motor, and for most applications, it should be able to do a pretty good job. So, but this new wiring will definitely help. This new wiring, 16 gauge wiring, will give it every opportunity to reach its maximum output of power. Yeah, okay. Let's see. What else? Oh, I also changed out the belt as well. This is the belt that was on the machine when it came to the workshop. It was a little bit too long, and it's a little bit too rigid, and also it was a little bit too narrow as far as riding over the balance wheel. You want to check your belts real carefully and make sure that they're fitted appropriately for the machine. They've got to fit that well that's on the machine balance wheel right here. They've got to fill that well up nicely so that they've got maximum traction on that balance wheel. The other one had a gap on either side of it, and it didn't fit appropriately, and it was also too long. So we were getting issues with the delivery of power from that Japanese motor to the balance wheel and then down the machine. So check your belts, make sure they're fitted properly. I'm going to send back this other belt to Lorie so she can maybe, it looked like it was a pretty new belt. Maybe she can return it or use it in some other way. But now we've got a belt on here that is perfectly suited for the setup of this PFAFF 130-6. What else? What else did I do? All kinds of things. But yeah, it's a great machine, and you can tell by their, by the just the overall size of the machine, and with the addition of the extra cleated belt, you can sew a lot of stuff with this, and that's why I've set it up today with the idea of it being a leather sewing machine. And so in this 130-6 today, I've got a size 100, which equates to a size 16 Schmetz leather needle. In recent live streams, a number of people contacted me and said, Scott, you're always talking about the advantage of a leather needle, and you're using the 90-14 universal. Why don't you just put a leather needle in there and do all the sewing on that? So listening to the family, I've set it up with a leather needle today. And then I also have our real popular dual duty XP thread as well. It's kind of a utilitarian type thread. It does a real good job. And so this is our setup on that today as well. All right. I'm going to put on a little bit more Christmas music, get a drink of tea, and then I'm going to jump into this machine. I just got a text message from Susie. Let me see what it is. Oh, good. So a special warm welcome to Lorie and Rex from Illinois. Susie just sent me a text and told me that the owners are in the live stream, so it's wonderful to have them here. I let Lorie know that I was working in the workshop late last night. I think I wrapped up around 10 p.m. Eastern time. Finally getting through all the steps that I wanted to get through to get this machine ready for a live stream today. And then I texted Lorie this morning to tell her, yep, we're going to do it. So it's great to have the owners here. It's great to get this machine ready before Christmas. If Lorie has any projects or anything like that that she wants to work on, again, our goal will be to ship it by tomorrow or Monday. So it should be back in Illinois no later than around Thursday or Friday, hopefully. So yeah, good stuff. And for some reason, I end up shipping it later than that. I'll let Lorie and Rex know that. And they, I always send tracking information to the owners as well. So they'll have that also. All right, let me put on a little bit Christmas music. See if I can show you some of that. Oh, also, when you're using certain epoxies that are oil resistant, just a quick tip for you. When you're using certain epoxies that are oil and water resistant, obviously, you want to superheat them so that they dry harder. And in one of these pictures, I shared all these with Lorie and Rex. You can see me using a torch very carefully to superheat that epoxy material so that it's going to be a permanent fix. You can see the flame right there hitting it, and you got to be careful. Keep flames away from these coils because you'll fatigue them a little bit, and they can become brittle and break. There I am doing some of the rewiring of the foot controller. I was. Yep. Upgrading that. At any rate, a lot of pictures. I don't even know how many pictures I sent Lorie and Rex, but a lot of them to, kind of bring them into the workshop and have them appreciate all the things that were being done to get it ready. All right, a little bit more Christmas music. I guess he doesn't like bagels. All right, let me stop the music. So I did my initial sew off, and I didn't start with leather. I wanted to start on 100% cotton. So I've got 2 layers of cotton here with a stiffener in between. We laid down a basic straight stitch, really lovely, lovely stitching that this Model 130-6 just laid down. We're going to go through a couple more stitch length reductions, and I'll show you how to change that on this machine just so you're comfortable if you've got your own machine, how you can set it up for success. We'll start on the right side of the machine here. And this is going to be our stitch length controller. And it's also going to give us access to reverse as well. Right now, when I've got it pushed all the way up, I'm going to be sewing at the longest length that this model 130-6 can do. It's going to be right around 6 to 7 stitches per inch, depending on the feed and the presser foot pressure, etc. As you move it down, you can make that stitch much, much shorter, all the way down to about 30 stitches per inch. And if you push this controller all the way down, you're going to be sewing in reverse. Most of the other sewing machine manufacturers, they always have reverse at the top. On the PFAFF machines, reverse is going to be on the bottom. So make sure you get that right. Otherwise, you're going to be like, hey, this machine doesn't have reverse, but it does. So right now we would be sewing in reverse. And then as I move it up, we get longer and longer and longer and longer and longer all the way to the top. And you can screw it in as well if you want to lock that into place so that it doesn't move potentially through the vibration of the machine as you're sewing. Right here, we have feed dog drop. If you turn this, you can drop the feed dogs for freehand embroidery or free motion quilting, and then you can pop those feed dogs back up again. When you're winding a bobbin, you can come off of either one of these spool pins here. This is how the machine came with a horizontal feed. And Lorie said, can we go from a horizontal and maybe add another spool pin? And if it can be slightly longer, because some of my spools of thread are those real tall ones like you see used oftentimes with embroidery sewing. And so I've added this other spool pin now to Lorie's machine. And now she's able to do sewing from either one of those or wind a bobbin from either one of those as well. So it gives a little bit more flexibility. The PFAFF 130 was really set up with one spool pin with an auxiliary port that was for oiling that you could always use as a second one. And that's kind of what I did with Lorie's machine. There was another auxiliary point over here that's underneath the felt, and I had to grind down a commercial size spool pin and then tap it into the casing. Like most spool pins are held, they're held by friction, by tension. And so this one is anchored in there real nicely now. We're going to be using it for sewing today. But if you're winding a bobbin, you could come off of here. You go across the front of the machine down to this tensioner here between the two discs. There's actually two discs on there. And then you come up to the bobbin winder. Make sure when you put your bobbin on that it fits into that little pin so it's not going to slip. And then you push this down to begin bobbin winding. Disengage your clutch, hold the balance wheel, and turn this towards you, and then you'll be able to wind without the needle moving over here. Now, if some of you don't know it, the balance wheel on the 130 class models, it's not metal. It's actually plastic. It's a plastic resin, and so you want to treat it with a little bit of extra care. If you take it off for changing out the belt or whatever, make sure you don't drop it, or you could actually chip it or crack it. The only thing metal on this side really is going to be the stop action that you'll turn when you're winding a bobbin. But if you didn't know that, the balance wheel on the class 130s is plastic, you know it now. So treat them with a little bit more care and be careful about that. Okay? When you want to release it, just push this up, and then it'll pull away from the rim of the balance wheel. This is where you plug your power in over here. And this has all been rewired now since it was in the workshop. What else? Oh, here, let's talk about this control center over here. This control center over here is going to give you the opportunity to adjust your needle position with this right here. You push it back and then you slide it up or down. It has 3 positions. Obviously, left needle position, center needle position, and right needle position. But again, you just push it in. And then if you watch the needle at the same time, over here, there we go. Push it down for right needle position. Push it up for left needle position. And then come back here for a center needle position. So push it back and then you can drag it up or down. This control right here is going to be for buttonholes. And you can read in your manual more about that. Most of you know I don't do buttonholes. but this control will give you some control over that. Then also you've got this main control right here, which is going to, on 0, far to the right, it's going to give you a straight stitch. As you move it to the right, it's going to give you a wider and wider zigzag stitch. Okay. Over here, we've got an interesting little control by the upper tension. This is going to be used for embroidery sewing, but it's also going to be used as you go through different grades of material. If you want maximum take-up spring swing, so it's pulling harder to define that lock stitch, you want to make sure that this is at the highest position. You can rotate it down for lighter pull. If you're sewing some delicate materials like silk or satin, as you push it down, see me going down, 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 you go all the way down to the 6 o'clock position, and then you're not going to be pulling up as hard with that take-up spring. It's going to restrict the motion of that take-up spring. It can't have as full of a range of motion, and it's not going to be pulling up as hard. So you might get some looseness on your lock stitching. For all of our sewing today, I'm going to be pushing it back all the way up here to right around the 3 o'clock position. So it's going to give that take-up spring the maximum swing to pull on that thread to define that lock stitching. Hopefully that makes sense. The only downfall of the upper tension on the 130 and 130-6 models is there's not a limited turn with a range on the upper tension control. It's numbered, but you might have to turn it 4 or 5 times around in order to get the proper lock stitching on that machine. So as you turn it to the right, you're going to be pulling up harder to define the lock stitch. As you turn it to the left, counterclockwise, you're going to be limiting the pull of this mechanism, and it's going to give more definition to the top stitching. So this control here pulls up. The bobbin case down below is pulling down in a tug of war back and forth to define the tension and to define the quality of the stitching on the top and the bottom of the material. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Your light is back here. Turn it on, turn it off. Yeah. What else? What else? What else? Oh, you might notice that I have a little bit of a lift on each of the pedestal feet on Lorie's machine today. You can see it right there. Right there. I've got it on the back of the machine as well. That's because when they made the model 130-6 and they added that second cleated belt, they lowered the train of that drive mechanism down about 2 to 3 millimeters. And what that means is that on a flat surface, if you've got a flat surface like a carpet or something that's padded where it will pucker up a little bit, it's going to catch that. I don't know if I can show it to you or not. Oh, maybe from the side. There's our cleated belts right there. And it's actually going to make contact with the surface of this rubber pad that I have, unless I boost the machine up a little bit. It'll actually drag those cleated teeth against the surface. And so if you have that happen, just give yourself a little bit of a boost up. I believe that Lorie's going to mount this back in a table, so it won't be an issue for her, but others that are sewing on the table surface may have to raise up that machine just a little bit so that it doesn't catch that surface down below. Okay, let's do some more straight stitching on this cotton, and then we're going to jump into some zigzagging, and then we'll go through a fairly wide field of leather materials and give this machine an opportunity to kind of strut its stuff and show itself off a little bit as we go through the process. And while I'm getting set up for that, I'll give you a little bit more Christmas music, and then we will jump into this. All right, I'm going to pause the music a little bit quick. I just reduced our stitch length down to, what is it, about, let me get my glasses on. I just reduced it down to about 4. Actually, I'm going to bring this up a little bit. I reduced it down to about between 3 to 4. So we'll lay down a shorter stitch now. Now realize as you change the stitch length on a sewing machine, one would think like on a zigzag machine, and I've talked about zigzagging before and how you need more upper tension when you're zigzagging because of the bridge points between the zigzag. It's the opposite with straight stitching. With straight stitching, you need a little bit less upper tension depending on the rate of speed that you're sewing. So we're going to stitch down, making it a little bit shorter, and check that lock stitching, and then make an adjustment if we have to. Okay? All right, here we go. Should be about, well, let's see. Should be a little bit, probably about 8 to 10 stitches per inch, I'm guessing. Let's see here. All right, here we go. Yeah, I'd say that's probably about 8 to 10 stitches per inch. And again, when you're pulling away the material, kind of pull it to the side. This needle is going to be flat side to the rear, and you're threading it from front to back, so you don't put too much torque on the needle, even though it's a size 100 leather needle, which is a pretty robust needle. Pull it to the side, and that way you don't stress that needle at all. Yeah, it looks like we got some good balance. That's our lock stitching on the back. Let's take a look at that. And again, we're sewing on cotton. We're sewing on cotton with a leather needle. It's not the ideal setup. Yeah, some good looking stitching. Good looking stitching. Looks like our upper tension might be set a little bit high right now for doing that straight stitching at a smaller scale. So I'm going to back this off just a little bit. Turn it just a little bit counterclockwise. And we'll lay down one more line of straight stitching, and then we're going to jump into some zigzagging. And then we're probably going to have to adjust that upper tension back again to accommodate those bridge points on the zigzag. Let's go down even a little bit further now. We'll go teeny tiny. So I'm going to take our stitch length controller over here. I'm going to bring it down to probably about 1.5. Now we're not going to go any lower than that, or we probably won't be able to see the stitches. We're at about 1.5. Let's do another stitch row now. And listen to this 130-6 run. It's a monster of a machine. And it's got those double cleated belts. It's got heavy duty everything. Because again, it was designed with the idea of being more of a light industrial machine than a household machine. But it runs so squeaky quiet now. Actually, no squeaks. It runs so quiet now. It's going to be a pleasure for Lorie to sew on this. She could be in the same room while other folks are watching TV, and they'll barely be able to hear the machine running. Let's do another line of stitching. A little bit shorter. And always make sure your take-up arm is at the highest position when you launch. You get the smoothest launch that way. Trying to look at the screen here. All right, let's do another stitch line, and then we'll jump into some zigzagging on this 130-6. Oh yeah, that's a teeny tiny. That's a teeny tiny stitching. We'll take a closer look at that. Trying to think if there's any other tips on this machine that I can give you. There is an obscure oiling point, and I showed that in some of the photos to Lorie, right underneath the raceway. So that's our stitching right there. We're probably around 20 stitches per inch, I would guess, somewhere in that range. Turn it like this so you can see it this way as well. Yeah, you can see on that middle row there where we were doing about 8 to 10 stitches per inch, I talked about the fact that that the upper tension might need to be turned back a little bit. And you can see here where that middle row, the top stitching is just a little bit on the weaker side. It's a little bit on the weaker side. And you can see that because some of the stitches will tip a little bit. So that's where we could have benefited from backing off that upper tension a little bit so the bobbin case could pull down a little bit harder. Yeah, lovely, lovely stitching. Let's look at the lock stitching. And again, you can see on some of these stitches, I'll see if I can point at them with my finger. Right there, you see a little bit of a tip on a stitch like that, where the one end is tipped up or down a little bit. That's a tension issue. And that tells you that when you're looking at the lock stitch, if you see a little bit of a tilting on the stitch, your upper tension needed to be a little bit higher for that particular stitch length. It's going to vary depending on the material, depending on the needle you're using, depending on the thread you're using. Susie and I talked about one of the customers that we visited recently here in Kentucky, where she was using a Juki industrial machine, and she was sewing with absolutely the wrong thread. There were other issues going on with the machine as well, but Susie was able to educate her on the type of thread she was trying to use and why it wasn't the right choice. And if Susie wants to go a little bit more into that in the live chat and share about that experience we had visiting with that customer, that would be super. The other thing that we discovered is that this customer's husband likes to tinker on things. And after we left her with a perfectly running Juki industrial machine, her husband decided that he wanted to fidget with it a little bit. And then she sent us a frantic text that the machine, and this is 6 months after we serviced it, was having issues and that her husband had tried to fix it. We got to know our wheelhouses, don't we? We got to know what our limitations are and what our bank of knowledge is, and let others that are more equipped to address those issues address them, right? And like the saying goes, if something's not broken, don't fix it. Don't try to fix it. So, oh my goodness. All right, let's do some zigzagging now. Let's do some zigzagging. All right, so we're going to make some adjustments on Lori's machine. We're going to go to the longest stitch. So that means we have to push this all the way up. And whenever you're adjusting stitch length or stitch width, make sure that that needle is clear of the material, like you can see right here. Otherwise, you're going to bend your needle. So we're going to push it all the way up. All the way up. There we go. And we're going to adjust this to the widest point, which means all the way to the left. So now we're set on 4 on stitch width. We're set on 5 on stitch length. We've got the setup for the widest, longest zigzag that this model 130-6 can do. So let's lay it down on this 100% cotton, and we'll see how our tension is managed. See how well we do with the tension factor. All right. Let's lay down a zigzag, and then we'll go through a different series of zigzags, different widths, different lengths, etc. Here we go. See, it's got a lot of get up and go, doesn't it? It's got a lot of get up and go. So I'm looking at the top stitching of this zigzag that we just laid down, and it looks really, really good. We've got a real good balance, it looks like, on the top stitching. Let's turn it over and see if we have any loosey-goosey stuff going on with the zigzag lock stitching. That's going to be our biggest challenge with the lock stitching. And it looks like we nailed that as well. That's our lock stitching on the back. Absolutely spot on. So right now that upper tension and that bobbin case are being friends. They're getting along and they're balancing things very, very nicely here in laying down a beautiful lock stitch for the zigzag, and also a beautiful top stitch on the zigzag as well. And that tells us that both of those are calibrated. Both of those are set up so that Lorie will have success if she wants to do a super wide or super long stitch. She's not going to be battling that tension issue like a lot of the sewists do. And also with understanding how the tension works, you know how to adjust it if you run into any issues, right? Upper tension pulls up, bobbin case pulls down, so you adjust accordingly. All right, let's reduce that zigzag down a little bit and lay down a couple more columns of stitching on this 100% cotton. And then we're going to move finally into some of that leather, which this machine loves leather sewing. Yes, it does. All right, so let's make a quick adjustment. We're at 5 right now on stitch length. Let's drop it down to, say, 3.5. Right about there. I'll screw that in so it doesn't move. And then we're going to adjust our stitch width over here from 4. Why don't we go down to right around in the 3 range, right around there? Yeah, let's do that. Let's lay down another zigzag and we'll see how it presents on this 100% cotton. And again, we're sewing, if you joined us a little bit late, we're sewing with a leather needle today, a size 116 size, which is, you know, as Sunny would have said, our dear friend that passed away some time ago, she would have called it a harpoon needle. We're sewing with a harpoon needle today. And if you joined us a little bit late, this is the needle we're using today. Yeah. It's a great needle, great needle. And it does pretty well. It does pretty well on cotton, don't you think? All right, so let's lay down another stitch column now. Move this over a little bit. And I've adjusted the presser foot pressure already. This is our adjustment right here. If you turn it clockwise, it's going to push down harder with the presser foot against the material and kind of push it into those feed dogs. If you turn it counterclockwise, it's going to push lighter if you're sewing on more delicate materials like silk or satin, etc. All right, that's a pretty good camera shot, I think. That's a pretty good camera shot. All right, let's try this next stitch column of zigzagging. Here we go. I'm taking it kind of slow because this thing wants to really get up and go. Get up and go. So there's our top stitching on our next zigzag. Beautiful zigzag, really lovely. We turn it over, our lock stitching. It's also bang on. Looks really good. So even at that reduced size of the zigzag, we're maintaining a real good tension balance between the top stitching and the lock stitching. I didn't get much sleep last night. So if I seem a little bit bumbly, it's lack of sleep. But at any rate, that's our lock stitching again. Really quite lovely, I think. Really quite lovely. Top stitching. Let's go down one more size on the zigzag, because we had done 3 columns of straight stitching. We might as well do 3 columns of zigzagging. And then we'll move away from the cotton and we'll move into some of the leather. Go down one more size here. Check our camera angle. Yeah, that looks like a pretty clear shot. So off camera, what I'm doing is I'm going to adjust the stitch length down a little bit lower. Right now we're at about 3. I'm going to go all the way down to about 2. And then I'm going to adjust our stitch width from 3 also down to 2. And again, notice that the needle is clear of the material while I'm making these adjustments. You don't want to bend your needle. It's going to create issues in hitting your throat plate. And I shared pictures with Lorie and Rex. There was quite a bit of damage to the throat plate on this machine which would suggest that someone that was using it, and it may not have been Lorie, it may have been someone else, but they were either pushing or pulling the material and flexing the needle, and then the needle was striking the throat plate. They probably broke a lot of needles, but you always want to try to repair that by using a fine grit sandpaper. You can go as high as 2,000 grit, but a good range would be somewhere between somewhere between 800 grit sandpaper and 1,000 grit sandpaper. And then you just slide it, you take the throat plate cover off and you slide it in between to get all those barbs of metal flattened down and smooth again. So as the bobbin thread is coming out of the raceway, completing that stitch process, it doesn't get snagged on there and create issues for you. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. I'll show you real quick. Let me see if I can pull it up on the phone. Let's see if I can find those. I think I did that. Let's see here. Here we go. So there you can kind of see the throat plate area. It's got scarring on the top and bottom of it. It should be a perfect oval around there. It should be a perfect oval, and it's not. You see another shot of it there. And then I'm carefully trying to use sandpaper in the throat plate area to smooth those areas down, basically just working it up and down, up and down, up and down. That's the tip of the sandpaper right there. Who is that scary dude with his magnifying glasses on? That's fun. And then slowly we start to get some of the unevenness out. There we've gotten a lot more of the unevenness out. Yeah, so just watch for that. And one of the factors that weighs into it as well as presser foot pressure, the reason that most sewists will get impatient with the sewing machine is because it's not feeding correctly. The material isn't moving evenly over the feed dogs. It's slipping, it's sliding, and so they start yanking on the material or pushing the material when all you have to do, assuming your machine has it, is come up here and adjust the presser foot pressure. If it's slipping, turn it clockwise 2 or 3 turns, and that will give you much better feed, and you won't have to damage your machine or break needles. All right, let's do another stitch column of zigzagging, and then we'll finally jump into some fun leather sewing, okay? All right, here we go. Yeah. That was probably only about 1/8 of the foot controller pushed down there. It's got a, even with this Japanese aftermarket motor, because of the workshop magic and the servicing and the adjustments and everything, like I said, I think it'll do the job nicely for Lorie. I think it will. Yeah. So there's our zigzag top stitching. Really quite lovely. Yeah, very nice. Very, very nice. We turn it over. Look at the lock stitching. Now, remember what I said. Sometimes if you go smaller, you have to make adjustments in the tension. So let's scrutinize this last zigzag stitch that we did. We'll take a close look at it. And it looks like the peaks might be a little bit weak on that zigzag. They're not as defined as the top stitching. So what adjustment do we need to make the lock stitch peaking more defined? What do we need to do to make this a little bit more defined? It's still a good looking zigzag on a smaller scale, but we could make it better. Yeah, very nice. Well, if you were saying to yourself, but you didn't necessarily type it in the live chat, if you want a more defined stitch, whether it's a straight stitch or a zigzag on the lock stitch side, then you've got to bump that upper tension up, don't you? You got to bump that upper tension up a little bit so that it's pulling up harder and it's going to define that lock stitching better than it would otherwise. Trying to clip all my threads here. So to kind of warm up this this beauty of a Western Germany masterpiece machine, this 130-6, we've gone through 6 stitch columns so far. We started with a long straight stitch. We kind of reduced it down. And then we went to zigzag, started about as wide and long as we can go, reduced it down, and got some lovely, lovely stitching from Lorie's 130-6, the top stitching, and then also the lock stitching here as well. So now let's jump into some leather. Let's do some leather sewing. I've already done a little bit off camera. This is what I was testing off camera. You can see it's not a thin sew off. That's going to be some hardened, genuine cowhide. It's a little bit more rigid, kind of like that belt that was on the machine when it came to the workshop. Really rigid, high density, high piercing threshold. But this machine just kind of mowed through it. There we've got a nice wide, oh, there it is. We got a nice wide zigzag on this off-camera sew-off. And some good-looking lock stitching as well. A little bit loose over here. We could have tightened that upper tension up and gotten better definition. And we'll make those adjustments during the sew-offs if we have to really make sure that we got some good balance between the top and the lock stitching, okay? Let me take a quick rest on my voice, and I'll put on a little bit more Christmas music for you. I'll also share a fun picture with you. Susie and I, because we tend to be friendly, outgoing people, we make friends real quick wherever we are. And I've become good friends with a fellow that helps run the local newspaper. And he runs the newspaper in Pineville, Kentucky, and does a lot of work there. And he and his wife were out doing good. It was Shop with a Cop. And I think that's a national thing all over the country. We've got police officers, deputy sheriffs, state police officers, everybody that will go out to a place like Walmart, and they've raised a bunch of money here in the southeastern Kentucky area around Middlesboro, Pineville. The law enforcement officers raised almost $50,000. And then what they do with that $50,000 is they will take the children that are from needy families, and the parents will bring them to Walmart, and they'll take them through the store, let the kids pick out the things that they really would love to get for Christmas. And then the police officers have that fund that then, is used to pay for all of those items. So the family leaves with a bunch of wonderful Christmas presents that they don't have to somehow figure out how to budget for. A lot of them are very, very, they're in difficult situations. There's a lot of poverty all over the country, but particularly as you go into the South, there are impoverished areas. And it's such a great program. At any rate, long and short, Santa was there along with the police officers. Matter of fact, I believe it might have been a police officer dressed up as Santa. And I saw Len over there, and I said, "Hey, how you doing, buddy?" He said, "Hey, take a picture with Santa." I said, "Okay." So here I am with Santa at Walmart. And yes, I'm proudly wearing my Kentucky shirt. And you see the straps over my shoulder. Unlike in certain parts of the country where they will have a SWAT team out there if they see you walking around with a firearm, in the state of Kentucky, the state of Tennessee, it's constitutional carry. So when I go into our local Walmart with Susie, I'm packing, because you might remember a number of months ago, there was a situation up in Michigan where we recently just mailed a sewing machine back to, where there was some crazy person that stabbed about a dozen people, some critically, and that there was no one up there in Michigan in Walmart that could intervene until the police finally were able to arrive. Well, in Kentucky and Tennessee, if you're a crazy person and you try attacking one of our shoppers, there's going to be a lot of guns there that are going to deal with you. And so Susie carries, I carry, and Santa didn't seem to mind. So, yeah, it's great. We love Kentucky. I'm just going to say it. We love Kentucky. We love the southeastern part of the country. And it's great to be a part of the community. And it's great to be so welcome, to just feel like we've been here all our lives. Yeah. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. All right. Let's see here. I forgot what we were doing. Oh, we're going to do some leather sewing now. I forgot what we were doing. All right. All right. I'm going to start with some protected full grain leather. And let's see here. Give me just a second. I'm just checking something on the computer real quick. So protected full grain leather is used a lot in real fancy jet airplanes, like the kind of plane that President Trump might be flying on, or other folks like that. They put it on the seats because it is stain resistant. It's very, very durable, and it's going to give you the opportunity to have the longest run time with that particular leather compared to other types of leather that they might use. It's going to have a great deal of durability. It's going to be stain resistant. Let me adjust the camera a little bit more. It's going to be stain resistant as well. So if somebody spills, alcohol or something like that on it, it's not going to stain that material either, which is great. I'm trying to look something up on the computer real quick here, folks. Just bear with me for a second, if you would. I should have put Christmas music on as I was doing this, but I didn't. Oh, I was trying to look up. I should tell you what I'm looking up. I was trying to look up who the official owner is of PFAFF now, and they're labeling it as the Singer Sewing Machine Company. But Singer is owned by somebody else. So if anyone wants to, I was trying to look it up and I wasn't successful. If someone wants to try to look up who owns the PFAFF Sewing Machine Company now, it pops up on the Singer website like Singer owns it, but I don't know if that's correct or not. I don't know that that's correct. Okay, so let's stitch down this protected full grain leather. I am going to try to go with a super wide zigzag and then do a super long stitch on it. And I should also mention, and I haven't mentioned it, as Lorie and I were getting acquainted and she was talking about sending her machine to the workshop, I asked her, I said, is your 130-6 set up with a coffee grinder? I think I said coffee grinder, and I think I got a response like, a what? Well, the 130-6 is the other great innovation that they added to these machines after the 130 was introduced in 1932, is they added an embroidery kit that mounts to the rear of the machine right about here. It mounts to the rear of the machine right here, and it generates a wide number of decorative ornamental type stitches. They're really quite spectacular. And I've shown that machine on this channel before. If you want to look it up and see what that looks like and see what it can do, go ahead and do that. They're really hard to find. Lorie had asked me, hey, you think we can find one? I said, I doubt it. But with that, you'd be able to do a wide variety of stitching with this machine. But even as it is, straight and zigzag stitching. You can modify the length and the width of those and generate a wide field of other stitching as well. So it all works out in the end. But let me go super wide. I'm going to make the adjustments like this. I'm going to take our stitch width and go all the way back to 4. I'm going to take our stitch length and go all the way up to 5. Lock it in place. So let's try to do a super wide, long zigzag on this protected full grain leather. And we'll see if we have to potentially make any tension adjustments for it. Hopefully we're okay. All right, let me get that into place. All right, here we go with a super wide, super long zigzag on protected full grain leather. Top stitching looks good. Top stitching looks really good. We'll see how we did on the lock stitching in just a moment. Let me clip those threads. Give that thread a pull. So there's our top stitching right there. That's easy when you got leather because you got the nap. You know that lock stitching, unless you sew upside down, that lock stitching is going to show up on the bottom of the material where the nap is. Yeah, good looking zigzag. I might go, if I were going to be sewing this all day long, I might go a little bit shorter to give it even more of a peak. I like the zigzags that have a real defined peak. Yeah, let's look at that lock stitching, see how we did. Very nice. Actually, very, very nice. It doesn't look like we have to make any adjustments at all. You look at it like that too. So let's go to a straight stitch now on this protected full grain leather and see how we do with that one. Okay. And hopefully you've heard by now how quiet this 130-6, I should say this mighty 130-6 is stitching. And that's really the difference with Workshop Magic. Lorie can attest with all the pictures I sent her of the process that I took her machine through. It is a deeper, more in-depth service than anyone else in the world does. I don't know anyone else that digs deeper into a machine than I do. And it really makes all the difference. That's why the machines on this channel, I get messages from people around the world saying, I've got exactly the same machine. I cannot sew at that level. And I'll say, send it to me. Ship it to me. I had a Swedish machine that came all the way from London, England, because that person said, I want my machine to do what your machines do. And when he got it back, he was a happy camper. So yeah, if you want greatness in your machine, send it to the workshop and we'll make it happen. So I'm going to adjust our stitch width down to 0 now. And again, I just do that by turning this control. We were up on 4, turning it down to 0. We're going to come down. Let's actually leave it on 5. So we're going to do a straight stitch. Our stitch length is on 5. And let's see how we do with this one. Okay. Let's see how we do with this one. Oh yeah, that's good. That's a good shot right there. All right. Straight stitching on protected full grain leather. Here we go. Oh, that's a beautiful top stitch. If you were making leather bags or maybe making something else out of leather, if you have top stitching like this, holy mackerel, you're going to sell out in a matter of hours. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful top stitching. Now, as defined as our top stitch is, how's our lock stitch going to look? Do we maintain balance or is it going to be a little bit on the loose side? And it looks like it's a little bit underdefined, doesn't it? See that? Our top stitching is not as defined as it should be. So I'm going to make an adjustment on the upper tension. I'm going to turn it up and we're going to stitch it one more time and see if we can tighten that stitching up more than it is right now. It's not horrible, but it's not as good as it can be. Not as good as it can be. So let's make an adjustment on the upper tension. We'll stitch down this protected full grain leather one more time. Remember, protected full grain leather compared to, say, Italian leather. That's Italian leather right there. Italian leather is going to be a softer, lower density leather than protected full grain. So on this Italian leather, we're not going to have as difficult of a time in maintaining the lock stitch because the material is more supple. As you move into the protected full grain leathers or the hardened leathers, it becomes more of a task to try to maintain that lock stitch. Okay? So know the type of material you're sewing with as well. Even if you have a leather needle, you might have to make those adjustments to try to define that stitching better than it would be otherwise. So I'm going to get this back into place, and then we're going to go over to our upper tension right here, and we're going to crank it up about 2 turns. Hopefully that's enough. So I'm going to go like this. And again, on the PFAFF upper tension, there's no stop points like on most machines where you have a range of, say, 0 to 9. On the PFAFF, you just have to keep cranking it and cranking it and cranking it until you get the desired result that you want. So I just guessed a calculated guess of 2 turns should do it. Let's see if I'm right. Okay. Let's get back over here so we can get a clear view of the stitching. Well, what a beautiful top stitch on this protected full grain leather, isn't it? Beautiful, beautiful top stitch. All right, let's see how close we got. And again, if we were doing this all day, we'd be able to find that sweet spot on the tension. So every time we went through this protected full grain leather, it would be just absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. All right, here we go. Okay, did we lose our top stitch? That's the one thing you have to look for when you're making adjustments on tension. If you adjust it too far, you take away from the other stitch line. So if you crank up the upper tension, you're going to be weakening that top stitch. But it looks like we still have a beautiful, beautiful top stitch. Beautiful, beautiful top stitch. Yeah, it looks basically the same as the other one. Very, very nice. Now let's see if we brought a little bit of an impact. I'm going to leave the thread attached so we can clearly see which row it is. It's going to be this outside row. And look at the impact that we brought. Yes! Those 2 turns on the upper tension made all the difference in the world. On this original column here we did, you can see that the stitching was kind of undefined. It was loosey-goosey. We gave just 2 turns to the upper tension, and all of a sudden, we've started to pull that lock stitch into a defined look at me. Look at me. You can look at them side by side here. And you can see the impact that we brought. I have to kind of pull it back here because of that nap. Look at how loose it was down here. See those little loopiness areas? So it's easy if you know what to do. It's relatively easy if you know what to do to correct a stitch tension issue. Susie and I have talked to folks that are just ready to jump off the top of their house because they're so frustrated battling it. But once we explain to them, this is how it works. This is how it works. They're like, oh my gosh, that's so easy. I just adjusted it and it's working now. So share your knowledge, since you guys are so smart. I know you are. Share your knowledge with other folks so that they can have the same level of success as you do in your sewing room. Now we're going to go to this Italian leather. Remember, it's a more supple, softer leather. So we might run into some tension adjustment issues that we have to do there. Get it into place underneath the presser foot. And now we're going to try sewing some of this softer Italian leather, but we're going to be going through 2 layers of it. And I've got it back to back, so we'll be able to see. There it is. You'll be able to see it a little bit more clearly. And you can see from the side here, if I put these together, it's going to be probably about 6 to 8 ounces of leather. So it's not a light sew off by any measure. but the leather is more supple, so the piercing threshold is lower than this protected full grain leather that we just sewed. And it's going to be lower than the genuine cowhide that we're going to sew in just a little bit. You got to understand the science of leather, so as you're working with it, you know how to adjust so you can have success, right? Okay, so right now we're set for a super long straight stitch. We're going to do that first on this Italian leather, and we'll see what result we get. All right, so I'm going to take the take-up arm all the way up, and let's try sewing down these 2 layers of Italian leather. Here we go. Come on, buddy. I almost got my finger. I was so excited. Oh, interesting. Another good lesson. Another good lesson. Look at what happened. Look at what happened here. You see this? This is what I talk about as far as presser foot pressure, how essential, how critical, how central it is to sewing. Now we started and we launched. Now, right now I'm set on the longest stitch length, which is right around probably 6 stitches per inch. That's nowhere close to 6 stitches per inch. That's like probably eight stitches per inch. And then as it started to feed with these 2 layers, because Italian leather is a little bit slippery. It's a little bit slippery stuff. We compressed it even more, where we were sewing like at 30 stitches per inch. I didn't make any adjustments. It's because the leather is slippery, and also because there wasn't enough presser foot pressure. So let's make an adjustment and try sewing it one more time and see if we can get a better result. Now, the thing we could do to help even more is we could add a walking foot, or we could add a roller foot. Both of those are available for this model online. If you go on eBay, if you go on Etsy, if you go on Pinterest, and you look up PFAFF 130 class, you should be able to find a walking foot or a roller foot that will help to eliminate or at least reduce this issue. But that is totally a feed issue right here. Let me get in the shot here. Pull that thread a little bit more. That's totally a feed issue right there. So let's see if we can make an adjustment and make it better. We may not get it perfect because Italian leather is very, very slippery stuff. And we're doing it back to back. Back to back, meaning that we have a slippery surface on top and we have a slippery surface on the bottom as well. Let's try it again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here, over here. Where is it? Ha! I'm going to come over here and I'm going to bump this up about 3 turns clockwise. 1, 2, 2.5. Okay. Now, again, without a walking foot or a roller foot, sewing Italian leather back to back, it is a really tricky thing. The other thing I can try to do is I can slow down our rate of sewing. I won't let I'll try to hold the motor back, and we'll try to slow at a slower rate of speed so that leather doesn't slip as much over the feed dogs and underneath the presser foot, okay? I'll try to slow it way down as best as I can. And I could demonstrate the impact of that by hand turning part of this. Let me do that. I'm going to hand turn part of this. So there we are, hand turning it. Couple more turns. And again, I haven't made any adjustments to the machine other than presser foot pressure. Okay, so now I'm going to try to launch using the motor. And even though I'm going to try to slow it down, you're probably going to see that compared to the stitches I just hand turned so that I can reduce the slippage factor, you're going to see that these are going to be a little bit more compressed, maybe a lot more compressed. We'll see. All right, let me try to launch into it real slow and see if we can get more even stitching this time. All right, here we go. Slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. There we go. Yeah, that's getting closer. We're still not there yet, but I'll let you look at the two side by side, and you should be able to see, trying to pull that there, you should be able to see right away the difference. But again, we're dealing with a very, very slippery leather, very slippery. And we're doing it with a back-to-back, but the comparison between the two should be real obvious to you. So Lorie can look for, if she's going to be sewing a lot of leather, if she's going to be sewing a lot of Italian leather, she can look for a walking foot or a roller foot. And that way you'll be able to avoid some of this down here and get stitching more like this up here. You see that? It's not perfect, but we're heading the right direction. We're definitely heading the right direction. The other thing I'm noticing with the Italian leather, even though it's a more supple leather, it's kind of spongy a little bit almost when it comes to the needle interacting with it. So here we've got a little bit of a weaker top stitch, and we can solve that by backing off the upper tension a little bit, right? If we want to have a more defined top stitch, we back off the upper tension, and then that bobbin case can pull down harder, right? So we're heading in the right direction, but you can see as I launched with the motor, this was the motor stitch off down on this end. Right away, we started getting that slippage again, and that compression of the stitch occurred. We're much smaller here than we're over here, where I hand turned it. Lock stitching? Yeah, lock stitching is pretty good, I would say. We maintain some good stitch integrity, but again, you know, adjusting that tension when you're dealing with back-to-back layers like this could be a little bit of a challenge. And when you're getting that slippage factor, you're not going to have as defined of a stitch either. So Italian leather, it is a challenging material to sew with unless you have the right setup. And the right setup is having enough presser foot pressure, preferably a walking foot and or a roller foot. But all in all, we made a good adjustment from starting with this to coming to this. Okay? All right. Let's move into another leather that's a little bit less needy than this Italian leather. Let's see what I have over here. Oh, this is actually a leather. This is that interesting material. This is actually a leather vinyl. It has kind of a vinyl-y material that's made to look like leather on the back. It's got leather top here, but it's not leather through and through. And you can see that if you look at it from the side, you can see the layering here. You see that? So this will be an equally tricky material to potentially sew with. Let's try a zigzag on this. Let's see if we can lay down a zigzag on this, and we'll mess around with the zigzag for a little bit with this. It's made to look like a leather. It's kind of a leather, but not a leather. It's got kind of a leather mix to it. And we'll lay down, let's see. I'm deciding if I want to go with a 3 or a 4 on the stitch width. Does anyone have an opinion? Should we go stitch width 3 or stitch width 4? 4 is obviously going to be even a little bit wider. It sure looks like leather, though, doesn't it? It's got a leather topper. Kind of like when you buy shoes. You buy shoes, sometimes it'll say leather upper sort of thing. This is kind of a leather upper material. Maybe they make shoes out of it, or you could make shoes out of it. All right, let's try a 3 then. Susie said a 3. We'll try a 3. We'll bring this down a little bit. I'm going to adjust our stitch length as well. So our stitch width is on 3. Our stitch length, I'm going to bring it down to right around 3.5. Actually, let's go right down to 3. We'll go 3 and 3. So we're going to try a zigzag on this leather vinyl material, and we'll see how we do in maintaining this. All right? All right, here we go. And you notice how we're kind of pausing a little bit. I'm not pushing the foot controller down as far as I want because I want to give it some good feed. But we're also, again, remember, we're dealing with an aftermarket Japanese motor that's rated, when you do the conversion, it's rated at about 0.67. The original motor, again, if you joined us late, the original motor on this machine would have either been a 1.1 or a 1.3 amp Western Germany motor. That would have given it a lot more drive to push this machine through materials like this. But that's okay. That's okay. We'll work with what we have and just kind of monitor things and make adjustments as needed. Here we go. Come on, one more time. There we go. So this is our leather vinyl material. And a lot of people might make items out of this as well. It would be less expensive than using, full grain leather or something like that, but it's still going to give you a beautiful product. So if you're making a product or a gift for Christmas, you might choose to buy a leather vinyl type material like this. It's also going to be a little bit stronger than some of the leathers, and it's going to be a little bit more resistant to some of the issues that leather gets where it dries out. It's going to be a little bit more stable. And it looks like we've got a great top stitch. Let's see how we did on the lock stitch. There's our top stitching on this leather vinyl material. Show it to you like this as well. Yeah, very nice. And again, if I tilt this towards the camera, you'll see how thick this stuff is. You got a fairly thick layer of leather. You've got a fairly thick layer of vinyl. And so this PFAFF 130, it's got to work a little bit to get through this stuff. Even with the cutting point of that leather needle, it still has to work. All right, let me give these a clip. And let's see if we can go to a straight stitch now and see how it manages a straight stitch on this tricky material. So I'm going to take our control here back to 0, turning it all the way to the right. And I think I'll leave our stitch length around 4. We're not going to go quite as long. We're at 3.5 to 4. And we'll try a straight stitch next to this zigzag, okay? But that's a lovely, lovely stitch on this material. And again, I would probably say this material is just as tricky as the Italian leather, if not more so because of the vinyl factor. All right, let's try this one. I'm going to give it a little bit more gas. We might get a compression to the stitch, but I think it'll feed a lot better than the Italian leather because the back side of this has a little bit more bite to it, and it's going to, those feed dogs are going to be able to grab it. It's not going to slip away like that Italian stuff. All right, here we go. Oh, very nice. Yeah, I can still see there's a benefit in having that walking foot or that roller foot, because even on this leather, having that vinyl backing, which can make it a little bit slippery. Oh, I see too. Our top stitching is a little bit underdefined. I might stitch this one more time. I might go a little bit longer on the stitch. But again, if you look at that top stitching, and it looks like it's not as defined as the lock stitching on the back, that's going to require an adjustment. Let me ask the audience, if our top stitch needs more definition, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do if we want a more defined top stitch? If we want to have a top stitch that kind of looks like this, kind of jumps off the page and goes, wow, that's gorgeous. This vinyl leather stuff is a little tricky to sew with. So if we want to define that top stitch more, what adjustment do we make? What adjustment do we make? Adjust the button. I don't know what that means. If we're going to adjust the button, yeah, Cheryl, is it Cheryl? Yeah, Cheryl and Susie are on the right track. We've got to make an adjustment to the upper tension control, or the button as Cheryl referred to it. We've got to turn it back a little bit, because right now that upper tension is pulling really hard to give us a really good looking lock stitch. That's a very good looking lock stitch, especially at that scale. We're at about a 2.5 to 3 on stitch length. Really nice looking, but then it's stealing from the top stitch. So we're getting a top stitch that isn't as poppy. It's not as defined. So if we want a poppy top stitch and we want to balance them better, we back off the upper tension, and then it allows that bobbin case to pull down harder to give us a more defined top stitch. Remember, the bobbin case in here is pulling down. The upper tension here is pulling up. It's a tug of war. So Susie and Cheryl are exactly right. We've got to adjust that upper tension to give us a more defined top stitch. So I'm going to do that a little bit right now. I'm going to take this upper tension and I'm just going to back it off just a little bit, turning it counterclockwise. Now, again, the challenge with the upper tension on these class 130 models is there's no range definition set. You're just cranking it one way or the other and getting the results you want. You can't say, well, last time I adjusted it to 5 and that worked out perfectly. Well, you might go past 5 twice. You might go past 5 twice before you get the result that you want. So that's the only tricky thing a little bit with the upper tension design on the class 30 models. All right, so I'm going to go a little bit longer this time. We made that adjustment. We're going to try to give some of the credit back to the top stitch. We just don't want to take too much away from the lock stitching. So I'm going to go up to about 4 now on stitch length, going just a little bit longer. Now we're going to try stitching the same column of straight stitching and see how it presents. So we did make it a little bit longer, but otherwise everything else is the same. All right, here we go. Slow down, buddy. Slow down. Slow down. Slow down. Yeah. See where I sped up too much there? It kind of made that slip again a little bit. Yep, you can see the slip factor. Some of these leathers are just downright tricky. They're just real tricky when it comes to feed, and that would be the benefit of having a roller or walking foot. Here you can see we started out real strong. This is our lock stitching. I wanted to look at that first. Here we started out real strong with our lock stitching, and then the machine raced a little bit. My foot pushed down the foot controller harder than I wanted, and then we slipped right there. See that? And then I slowed us down. I slowed us down again, and then we caught back up right here at the end. Same thing on the top, a little bit of a factor. So on some of these trickier leathers, a zigzag is going to be your better bet, because it's going to give you more control over that feed. It's going to slow the machine down to accommodate that needle swing, and it's going to give you better control if you don't have a walking foot or if you don't have a roller foot. So I'm going to lay down on this final column. I'm going to lay down a really wide, real long zigzag, and we'll see if we can get even a better result on this tricky leather vinyl combination. Okay, here we go. Oops, there we go. Yeah, that's more of what we're looking for. That's more of what we're looking for. Going to give us a much more even, properly formed stitch, because of that needle swing. It kind of automatically slows the machine down, and it slows the feed down so that we're able to control that slippage factor a little bit better. So we got a very good looking zigzag on the top stitching. I'll kind of go around here. And our lock stitching also looks like it's bang on. This is our lock stitching on the back. Had one little hiccup right there on the top of that peak right there, where it wasn't quite as defined as it needed to be. But some of these leathers are just downright tricky when it comes to maintaining that stitch integrity. They're just downright tricky. Let me give that a clip. Let me get a drink of water or something, and we'll jump into some of the final sew-offs here. I'm just going to do one or two more sew-offs. I'm going to do some of this hardened leather, and then we're going to do some of this genuine cowhide leather, and we'll sew in a circle for the final sew-off, okay? I'll get this into position so we're all set. All right, a little bit of Christmas music. Yeah. So what I just sewed, as you were listening to some of the Christmas music, I sewed some of this hardened leather. You can see the thickness of it. It's probably 6 to 8 ounces of leather. It's going to have a lot heavier density to try to get through. And again, just by nature of the fact that it's got a nice nap on the back that those feed dogs can bite into, it's not slippery. We laid down an absolutely drop dead gorgeous zigzag stitch. The stitch spacing, the formation, and everything about that stitch is just spot on. So depending on your choice of leathers, you might not need that walking foot or that roller foot, because the leather is going to have the surface that will allow those feed dogs to grab hold of it and feed it over evenly. Beautiful, beautiful top stitching. There's that thickness again. You can kind of look at it from the side. There's our lock stitching on the back. Very, very nice. Formation, the peaks, everything is just absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. Now, for sake of time, rather than doing straight stitching and everything else on this hardened leather, well, I'll do one row of straight stitching. And then we're going to move into the final sew off to wrap up this live stream, sewing in a circle, and I'll do it to Christmas music. Okay? So we're going to lay down a straight stitch on this now. And then I'll leave that other space open for Lorie to try stitching this hardened leather once the machine gets back to Illinois. All right, so we're going to do a really long straight stitch. And yeah, here we go. Very, very nice. Very nice. This hardened leather is just a wonderful leather to sew with. It truly is. It doesn't have that slippery back to it like some of the other leathers or the leather combination materials. And the result is you get just an absolutely gorgeous, let me pull that thread a little bit more. You get an absolutely gorgeous stitch without having to make too many adjustments. on tension or presser foot pressure. It just grabs it and just goes with it. There's a vertical look at it as well. And again, this is probably almost 8 ounces of hardened leather. You look at it from the side too. And this 130-6 laid down a stitch that is absolutely brag worthy. That's our top stitching right there. Our lock stitching is equally gorgeous on this hardened leather. Look at that. So even with an aftermarket motor, even with an aftermarket foot controller, so our motor and our foot controller are not original to this 130-6. This machine has more than enough power for the type of sewing that most sewists are going to be using it for. And when it comes to leathers that don't have that slippery factor to them, all you need is what you got. You don't need a walking foot. You don't need a roller foot. You just slow your rate of speed down a little bit, adjust your presser foot pressure, and you're going to get a beautiful result like this and like that. So far on this live stream, we tried a number of different leathers. This hardened genuine cowhide is probably my favorite. It gave us a result that is just absolutely stunning, an absolute stunning result on this hardened cowhide. This vinyl material that's vinyl and leather, we got some good results from that as well, but the feed factor becomes a problem because of the slipperiness of the material. So we had to make some adjustments on that, and the result is, I would say we still did well with it, but it's not a material that I would choose to sew on all the time. Same thing with the Italian leather. Had we flipped these so that the nap was facing the same way, we would have had less of a struggle with the Italian leather. But as soon as you put it back to back like this, you got slippery, and without the assistance of a roller foot or a walking foot, you're going to be battling this material a little bit. You just are. But all in all, Lorie's machine did a great job with it. And then we got this full grain leather that's used a lot in like private Lear jets and all those fancy places where rich people travel. Lorie's machine loves this protected full grain leather because, again, it's got that nap on the back that allows those feed dogs to do their job. And we got some great results from this protected full grain leather as well. Some real good results. We made that adjustment to tighten up that loosey-goosey in the middle, and then we got a beautiful stitch line on the bottom. Beautiful stitch line. So we kind of put this 130-6 through the paces today. We sewed the cotton. We sewed a variety of leathers. Some leathers the machine likes better than others, and that's okay. And now we're going to do our final sew-off, sewing in a circle to Christmas music. And you can kind of see our sew-off sandwich so far. Kind of do it like that. All the leathers we sewed, 100% cotton as well. And now we're going to do our final sew-off. Yeah, all right. And I had some other materials prepared, but I think we'll just move into the final sew-off. And yeah, get this done. All right, get that there. Three. And I usually do a straight stitch on the final sew-off. I think I'm going to try doing a zigzag. I think I'll try doing a zigzag. Okay, let me get some music on. and we will wrap up this live stream. And I want to thank the owners, again, Lorie and Rex, for the opportunity of having this machine in the workshop, getting it from Illinois, being able to do the things that I've done to get it back to a point where Lorie can really sit down and have fun with it and enjoy it. And also to our audience, when you're doing a live stream like this on a Saturday leading up to Christmas and the holidays, I'm always encouraged by having a big audience. And I understand that we've had quite a few people that have kind of popped in and popped out today during the live stream, 1,000+ people. And with a niche area like vintage sewing machines, that's really something. And if you haven't looked at some of the videos on this channel, I would encourage you to do that. We've got a lot of machines represented here. We also have some fun interviews as well that you can kind of check out of people that have been in the sewing industry, including my good friend Alex Askaroff over in the United Kingdom and England. I had a chance to do a real fun interview with him. You'll want to check those out and really get an appreciation for the people around the world that love what you love and love the machines that you love. It really is a big family. And Susie and I just love being a part of it and contributing what we can. We're always, always, always a student. Remember that. No matter how much you know, you can always learn from others. And that's the beauty of our family, is everybody brings talents and experience. And I would encourage, when we have a large audience, any of those that are in it, step out and introduce yourself so that we can get to know you and we can learn from you. Sometimes a teacher, always, always, always a student, always a student. All right, let me get some Christmas music on and we will wrap this up. I'm going to shut off the light real quick. I think that'll help. All right, I'll stop. I'll stop there. At any rate, it's so much fun to sew on leather like this and just lay down the stitching. I kind of overlaid some of the areas several times, but you get an idea of just how beautifully this 130-6 handles leather. Certain types of leather it likes better, doesn't it? But Lorie will have a lot of fun with this. This, again, is 100% genuine cowhide leather, kind of a sewing in a circle thing. It's probably about 4 to 5 ounces. It's not quite as thick as some of the other leathers. But wishing all of you the best of the holidays, a Merry Christmas, a blessed Christmas. And again, thank you to the owners, Lorie and Rex, for the opportunity of having this great Western Germany sewing machine in the workshop, a company that dates all the way back to 1862 and has been building some of the finest sewing machines that the world has ever seen. This one, again, would have been from the 1950s, but the original PFAFF 130 class came out in 1932. So write that down. Remember those facts. Celebrate this great machine. And yeah, let's plan on coming together again. Hopefully, I'll have another great machine that I can present to you.